I've carried this secret for years, and tonight, as I sit alone with nothing but the sound of rain against my window, I feel compelled to finally speak it aloud. Perhaps because it still lingers in my heart like an old scar, one that aches when touched. What happened that summer afternoon wasn't planned, yet it changed everything between us. It changed me. Her name was Aisha, my cousin. We were only a few months apart in age, and we'd grown up more like siblings than anything else. Our families lived on the same street, and from childhood, we'd been inseparable. Partners in mischief, confidants, best friends. Even as teenagers, when so many others drifted into their own circles, we stayed close. There was an ease about her, a warmth that made everyone around her feel at home. I used to think nothing could ever ruin that bond. But I was wrong. That summer, our families decided to spend a few weeks together at our grandparents' old house. It was a sprawling place with creaky floors and wide, sunlit halls, a house that smelled of history and quiet afternoons. Aisha and I slipped right back into our usual rhythm, staying up late whispering stories, helping each other with chores, sneaking out to the garden at night to watch the stars. Yet, something about her felt different this time. Or maybe it was me who'd changed. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way her laughter would light up her entire face, the delicate curve of her fingers as she braided her hair by the mirror, how her eyes seemed to catch mine for just a little longer than they should have. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just silly thoughts brought on by too much time together. But I couldn't stop feeling it, that pull, that quiet thrum beneath my ribs every time we were alone. I tried to hide it, to act like nothing had changed. But inside, I was restless, confused, torn between what I felt and what I knew was right. Then came that quiet afternoon. The house was unusually still. The rest of the family had gone to visit a relative nearby. I'd been reading in the living room when I heard faint music drifting from upstairs. Without thinking, I got up and followed the sound, step by step, until I stood outside her door. It was slightly ajar, just enough for me to see her sitting cross-legged on her bed, head bent over her phone, a soft smile playing on her lips as a song played in the background. Something in me faltered then, some final thread of restraint snapping. My hand rested on the doorframe, my heart beating far too fast. I told myself I'd just say hello, nothing more. But I knew even then, deep down, that what I was about to do would change everything. And still, I walked in. Aisha looked up as I stepped inside, her smile widening slightly before fading into something more tentative. "Oh," she murmured, setting her phone down. "You scared me." "I didn't mean to," I replied, though my voice betrayed the unease coiling in my chest. The soft melody playing from her phone filled the silence, and for a moment, I just stood there, unsure whether to retreat or stay. She tilted her head curiously, patting the empty space beside her on the bed. "Don't just stand there. Sit." So I did. The bed dipped under my weight as I lowered myself next to her, close enough to catch the faint scent of her shampoo. Neither of us spoke at first. Instead, we listened to the music and the faint hum of summer outside, birds chirping, a distant lawn-mower droning. It was an ordinary moment, and yet nothing about it felt ordinary. She handed me one of her earbuds, and our fingers brushed as I took it. Even that fleeting touch sent a strange warmth flooding through me. The song was slow, wistful, a love ballad full of longing. "This one's my favorite," she whispered, as if afraid the quiet room might shatter under her voice. I nodded, my throat too tight to answer. We sat like that for a while, letting the song speak for us. But soon, I couldn't ignore the way her knee rested lightly against mine, or how her gaze occasionally darted to me before falling back to her hands in her lap. My chest ached with something I couldn't name anymore. Something that felt both beautiful and dangerous. "You've been quiet lately," she said softly, finally breaking the spell. I met her eyes then, and something unspoken passed between us. A question. A confession. I swallowed hard. "It's because I don't know what to say. Around you. Not anymore." Her lips parted slightly, her breath catching. She didn't look away this time. The air between us seemed to thicken, heavy and electric. My hand hovered for a moment before daring to cover hers. She didn't pull away. In fact, her fingers curled gently around mine, almost as though she'd been waiting for this. My heart pounded as I leaned in, slowly, giving her every chance to stop me. But she didn't. When our lips met, it was soft at first, hesitant, like testing the waters of something neither of us was sure we should touch. But then her hand found my shoulder, and the kiss deepened, growing warmer, more certain. For the first time all summer, the confusion and guilt fell away, replaced by the simple truth of how much I wanted her. But when we finally pulled back, breathless and wide-eyed, her voice was barely a whisper. "We shouldn't, but I don't want to stop." And neither did I. For the rest of that afternoon, neither of us spoke much. We stayed there on her bed, leaning into each other, listening to the music play in the background while the sun slipped lower in the sky. But as the light faded, so did the spell that had wrapped itself around us. By the time the sound of a car pulling into the driveway reached us, Aisha sprang up, smoothing her hair and straightening her dress with trembling hands. I caught her wrist gently and murmured, "It's okay, no one has to know." She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. That night at dinner, she barely looked at me. The familiar sparkle in her gaze seemed muted now, replaced by something heavier. She laughed at someone's joke, but it sounded hollow, and when our knees brushed under the table, she flinched slightly before moving away. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that she just needed time. But over the next few days, the distance only grew. Every time we found ourselves alone, she'd find an excuse to leave. Every time I tried to catch her eye, she'd look anywhere else. And yet, late at night, I'd catch her staring at me from across the room when she thought I wasn't looking. Those moments gave me hope, but they also deepened the ache in my chest. One evening, I wandered into the hallway and heard her voice coming from her room. The door was cracked, and I froze when I realized she was on the phone with her best friend. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I feel like I betrayed everyone. Like I betrayed him, too. But I couldn't stop myself. And now, I can't even look at him without feeling sick and—" Her words cut through me sharper than any knife.
Betrayed.
I leaned back against the wall, the weight of her guilt sinking into me like a stone. What I'd thought was something beautiful, something that finally gave voice to everything I'd been feeling, was, to her, a mistake. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed everything, her hesitant smile, her whispered confession that she didn't want to stop, the way she'd clung to me like I was the only person who understood her. Had it all been a moment of weakness? A lapse in judgment she regretted the second it ended? When I finally closed my eyes, I dreamt of her back to me, walking away down a long, dimly lit corridor no matter how many times I called her name. I woke with her words still echoing in my mind. I betrayed everyone. And for the first time, I began to wonder if what we'd shared had been love at all, or just the start of something we'd both come to regret. IT was announced over breakfast one morning, casually, as though it were nothing more than another family arrangement, that Aisha would be leaving early for college. There was an opening in the dorms, her father explained, and it was better for her to settle in before classes began. I sat there in silence, staring at the toast growing cold on my plate, while everyone else nodded and offered polite congratulations. Across the table, Aisha kept her gaze fixed firmly on her tea. The news wasn't surprising, not really. The distance between us had become impossible to ignore. But hearing it spoken aloud felt like a final verdict, one I'd hoped we could somehow avoid. That evening, after everyone else had gone to bed, I found myself once again standing outside her door. This time, though, I didn't hesitate before knocking softly and stepping inside. She was packing. Her suitcase lay open on the bed, half filled with neatly folded clothes. She looked up at me, startled at first, before her expression softened into something weary, almost resigned. "I guess this is it," I said quietly. She nodded, fingers still fumbling with a stack of shirts. "It's for the best," she murmured. I stood there, unsure what to say, until finally I crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. When I finally found the courage to reach for her hand, she let me take it. Her fingers were cold, but they didn't pull away. "I never meant to hurt you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes glistened as she looked up at me. "I know," she said, "but some things they just can't happen. Not like that. Not between us." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat making it impossible to respond. We sat there in silence for a while longer, just holding each other's hands as though trying to memorize the feeling. And then, slowly, she leaned in and rested her head on my shoulder. "Promise me something," she said. "Anything. Don't forget me. But don't wait for me either. Live your life. Be happy." I nodded, even though I didn't trust myself to speak. When the morning came, I stood at the window and watched as her father loaded her suitcase into the car. She glanced up at me once as she climbed into the back seat, her expression unreadable, her lips curving into the faintest, saddest smile. Then the car pulled away, and she was gone. Even now, I still dream of her sometimes, of that summer, that room, that moment when love and betrayal became the same thing. And though years have passed, one truth remains: some goodbyes never really end.